Hello.
Hey YouTube, it's motomattman, and today is September 11, 2019, and I'll be honest with you, I can't think of a better way to spend part of September 11th than out exercising my freedom to get out here on two wheels. Well, other than maybe doing something that, you know, directly for the veterans or the active duty military. But anyway, I've heard a lot of talk on TV and on the radio about, you know, never forget, we can't ever forget, and people worried that there are people that forgot what happened on 9/11. And I personally can just about remember exactly everything like it was yesterday, what happened when we were attacked on 9/11. But let me stop there for a second. Yes, New York and DC were attacked on September 11th, and Flight 93 went down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. But make no mistake, even though the attacks happened on American soil, those terrorists attacked the entire free world. And I think those of you that live in the UK, live in Canada, live in Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, Brazil, Spain, Puerto Rico, wherever you are, and I'm sorry if I forgot anybody, but anyway, France, Italy, you all know what I'm saying. They attacked everybody, and I want to thank everybody out there in the rest of the world for their thoughts and prayers for America on September 11th, 2001. Now, as far as what I was doing on that day, well, I was on my way to work. I owned a tire shop at the time, and I was on my way to my tire shop when I heard on the radio that the first plane hit the towers. Mrs. Motomattman had the day off because she was going out that day to pick up her wedding dress. The attacks on New York and DC happened 4 days before Mrs. Motomattman and I got married, which changed a lot of things as far as our plans. The honeymoon and whatnot, had to cancel our plans and drive for a honeymoon. The planes were back flying again, but there was still so much uncertainty. Not that I was worried that we were going to be on a plane necessarily that got attacked, but I was worried that we would get to our destination for our honeymoon and the planes would be grounded again and we wouldn't have any way to get back. But anyway, I called her not when the first plane hit, but immediately after I heard that the second plane had hit. Because when the first plane hit, yeah, most of us were thinking at that time that, you know, mechanical problem with the plane, pilot error, something happened, it was an accident. Nobody's going to fly a plane into the World Trade Center on purpose. My goodness gracious. Quit putting on your lipstick. Anyway, as soon as the second plane hit, I called her and told her what happened. And I had a little battery-powered black and white portable TV at my tire shop. I don't even remember why it was there. But it also, you could plug it into the wall. So I plugged it in and turned on the news. and yeah, you immediately knew what happened. I stayed open for a little while because I had tires being delivered. As soon as those tires were delivered, I closed the shop and went home. I had several people that came into the shop for a patch or a plug or to get tires rotated and such, that I'll be honest, they walked in, they hadn't heard the news. They walked into the shop and asked me what was going on. I told them what was going on, and they immediately left. I mean, everybody, the biggest thing I remember from the early period right after the planes hit the towers was the numbness. Everybody just felt numb. You know, you didn't know who, it was like you didn't exactly know how to feel. I mean, we felt bad for what had happened, and sad and mad and upset, but we felt all of those things all at the same time, so much so that you really didn't know which emotion to grab hold of. You know, I mean, I remember that vividly. I also remember how all of a sudden people became nice. You know, people waving to each other that they didn't know at stoplights and stop signs and stuff, and you know, people holding the doors for each other that first day. You know, another thing that I can remember, and that's, I grew up my entire life growing up as a kid. We lived near military bases, primarily naval air stations and Air Force bases. So hearing jets overhead is something that I'm kind of, I use the word again, numb to. I mean, I just don't hear them. You know, I take my family to Virginia Beach on vacation, and if you've ever been to Virginia Beach, the Oceana Naval Air Station is, I mean, right down the street from the beach. I mean, it's not far, just a few miles. Everywhere, and Norfolk Naval Air Station is not very far away either. So there are constantly planes and helos going overhead, flying overhead. So you hear the jet noise. I mean, there are bumper stickers and t-shirts and stuff that they sell in that area that say jet noise, the sound of freedom. You know, and it's because it's one of those things that the tourist, you can tell who's a tourist and who's not, even if you're away from the strip, because when the planes go overhead, the tourists all look up to see what it is, whereas the locals, you just don't even hear it. But I bring this up because one of the things that I remember was that night, standing outside, and at that time I still smoked cigarettes, standing outside our apartment, smoking a cigarette, and talking on the phone to one of my good buddies that now lives in Washington State. I was talking to him, and there was no sound. There were no planes. Now, where I live now, I don't live anywhere near an air base of any sort. We had commercial planes that would go over all the time, but not military jets. But I remember how quiet the sky was when they grounded the planes, and how eerie of a sound that was. You know, I remember the very next day, September the 12th, I remember the flags that popped up everywhere. You know, it was almost like, and I don't mean just flags that popped up everywhere in people's houses that already had flagpoles. I mean everywhere. I mean, there were things, there were giant magnets that were being sold at the convenience store of a flag that you'd plop on the side of your car or your truck, you know, those door magnets that were being sold, that all of the profits were going to the victims of 9/11. I mean, it happened like overnight. You know, it seemed like every business had a flag flying from a flagpole. I'm gonna stop here because I got a text. I want to see what this text message is, and then we'll start this back up. It'd be a whole lot easier if I put the side stand down. Okay. Alright. Not a big deal. Alright. Moving on. Short little pit stop here. I'll go down here. Anyway, you know, this total unity, I remember. You know, it wasn't, you know, at first everything was really somber and people were afraid, and then in true American fashion it went from being somber and being afraid to all of a sudden this total anger, not at each other but at Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, and people wanting to know how we were going to get revenge, when it was going to happen, what we were going to do. We can't let this happen to us. You know, that all started. Now, take it for what it is. There were people at the time that, you know, were upset that, you know, so many people were wanting revenge. I don't know about you, but that was definitely the feeling that I had. I wanted to kick somebody's butt. You know, you're not going to come over here and punch us in the mouth and we're just going to sit there and take it. And the world itself did change after that. I mean, you want to know how much the world changed? You go to a sporting event or go to try to fly somewhere. I mean, good grief. You know, but things changed. Some things changed for the better. Some things changed for the worse. I remember the songs that came out. I remember Alan Jackson, Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning? I remember Toby Keith with coming out with songs, and other country artists coming out with songs about putting a boot up Bin Laden's ass. You know, I remember the rallies and things that there were. You know, people getting together in these large groups, rallying support. You know, I remember George W. Bush showing up at Ground Zero and taking the bullhorn from the firefighters, and somebody else asking, you know, somebody hollering that they could hear him just fine, and him saying that soon the whole world will be able to hear us. You know, I remember, I'll be honest with you, I remember George W. Bush throwing out the first pitch at the World Series and standing on the rubber on top of the mound and throwing out the first pitch and throwing a strike. And how how nuts everybody went over that. You know, I remember Sammy Sosa grabbing an American flag at a Cubs game and running through the outfield carrying an American flag. I remember the incredible support that we all received from all around the world. Those are some of the good things. You know, the crazy crap we got to go through at the airport and at sporting events today, that's some of the bad. I remember the pride I felt in Americans, and it's one of those things that still gets to me and still chokes me up an awful lot, just thinking about the first responders on 9/11 and how the first responders were running up the stairs. Sorry. The first responders were running up the stairs when everybody was coming down. I remember hearing the stories of people parking their cars on the Beltway in Washington, D.C. to help out when the plane hit the Pentagon. I remember the stories of bravery of the people on board Flight 93. You know, I remember those things. You know, and to be honest with you, I remember Mrs. Motomattman's and my wedding really, really well. But unfortunately, I remember the events of 9/11 that happened 4 days earlier better. You know, I remember the opening bell for the stock market when the stock market reopened. We were on our honeymoon, and our honeymoon went from going to some exotic place to going to Charleston, South Carolina. Not that Charleston, South Carolina is a bad place. I mean, we chose Charleston, South Carolina because we love Charleston so much. But we drove. And we watched the opening bell being rung for the stock market in our hotel room in Charleston. You know, it's one of those things that, as well as I remember it, it's also really crazy to think about the fact today that I was watching ESPN this morning and they made mention of the fact that the freshmen in college today weren't born when, most of them weren't born when 9/11 happened. It's been that long. It's been 18 years since 9/11. And it's crazy to think that. But that's the case. I mean, so I can understand how some of the memories for people have faded. But it's one of those things we have to keep reminding ourselves and teaching our children about what happened so it never happens again. You know, we can't fall asleep at the wheel. None of us, anywhere. You know, like I said, terrorism had been happening for a long time prior to that. It was the first time it had happened by foreigners on American soil. But I'll tell you what, where it happened to that extent. I mean, they tried to bring down the World Trade Centers earlier by planting a bomb in a garage underneath the World Trade Centers. But I'll tell you what, after 9/11 happened, you had more and more acts of terrorism perpetuated by the same groups of people that took place in England, in France, in Spain. We can't let these clowns win, but we've got to be ever vigilant. And we can't forget the first responders that died. We can't forget the people that were in the towers, the people on Flight 93, well, any of the planes. The people in the Pentagon. We can't forget any of those people. We've got to remember them. We've got to remember the families, the friends that lost people that day, or that have family members that have been scarred for life from the experience. You know, a lot of times when we think of PTSD, we think of soldiers fighting battles. We forget about those first responders, those people that were working in New York or working in the Pentagon, and the horrific things that they saw and they experienced. But we also need to remember, look, in a lot of ways we've moved on. We've become stronger in a lot of ways as a nation and as a world and society from what happened. And things have moved on. You know, we're back working and living our lives, going on vacations. You know, flying in planes. I mean, I have. Last time I flew in a plane, I didn't give it any second thought that there might be a terrorist on board. I was aggravated with all the crap that I had to do, that I couldn't bring my Dr. Pepper in a plastic bottle through the checkpoint because they thought it was going to, maybe it would be a bomb. Hey, just let me drink it. No. If it's explosive material, I'm not going to drink it. But anyway, you know, I think it's made the world see how small we really are as a world. And no, I'm not going to say it's a small world, but anyway, it has. But anyway, I just wanted to get this little rant done. I don't know what day I'm going to upload it. It's probably not going to be today. But I hope everybody does a little bit of thinking, remembering, you know. Make sure you, one of the things that I want to say is, I want everybody to make sure that they remember how they acted towards their family and their friends and their neighbors right after 9/11 happened. And let's do that all the time. It shouldn't take an event like 9/11 for us to show our family and friends how much we love them and care for them. And it shouldn't take events like 9/11 for us to be nice to strangers. That's the one thing that I think has gone away quite a bit. Excuse me. Gone away quite a bit since 9/11. You know, and unfortunately, I'll be honest with you, I don't think it took all that long before everybody forgot how they acted towards strangers. But, you know, hug your spouse, hug your kids, your parents, your siblings, your family members, the same way today and every day that you did on that night of 9/11. You know, make sure every time you get off the phone with your kids or your spouse or your parents, or every time you leave the house to go someplace, that you make sure that the last thing you say to your kids and your parents or your spouse is, "I love you." Because that's one of the things that everybody should remember from what happened on 9/11. You had all those people that died on that day. That may not have been the case. So make sure, just in case, because you never know what could happen. Make sure when you leave, or your spouse goes someplace, or your kids go someplace, when they get on the bus to go to school, that the last thing that you say to them is, "Have a good day and I love you." Because you don't know if you'll ever get a chance to do it again. But anyway, now that I've gone through that little rant, probably a bad place to end it. I just hope everybody is able to do a little bit of reflection on this day, but that it doesn't consume you. We cannot let what happened on that day consume us. You've got to remember, but you got to let go too. You know, us dwelling on it and letting it consume us, even if it's for a day, gives them exactly what they wanted on that day. Now I know that punk ass that orchestrated this whole thing got what was coming to him, thanks to a group of Navy SEALs. But you got to remember, there are people that just jump right in his spot. So the fight's not over. So we can't let them think that they want it all, because that just empowers them. But anyway, I hope you got something out of this. This rant today. And I hope you do click the like and the subscribe button. I don't know, you know, it's kind of different from my normal videos. You know, didn't mention a bike or anything to do with a bike or gear or anything. I'm on the sporty today. There, I mentioned the bike. I thought today was the day talking about 9/11. It was probably better off to jump on the Harley than to jump on the Yamaha or the Honda. Really didn't want to catch that grief. Not that it really matters, because to be honest with you, that freedom that we have is the freedom that we can choose not to ride an American-made motorcycle, that we could ride a Japanese-made motorcycle, or an Italian-made motorcycle, or a British-made motorcycle. But anyway, like I said, you know, if you like what you see, please click that like, click that subscribe button, And make sure you punch that bell so you get notifications whenever I upload any new content. And as always, I hope everybody has a great day. If you're able to get out on 2, make sure you keep the shiny side up and the rubber side down. And by the way, if you're at the AIM Expo, hope to maybe see some of you there. No, I'm not going to have a booth. I'm not big like the Club or Suburban Delinquent or Cat Cam, and I've got some special booth. But maybe I'll run into some of y'all there if you're there. We're planning on being there on Saturday. I think it's the 28th. Anyway, again, hope everybody has a great day. And remember, never forget what happened on 9/11. We can move on from it, but never forget. Have a great day.